Once again, Texas A&M continues to be disrespected by the national media.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So, ladies and gentlemen, Texas A&M continues to get this disrespect from the national media. And I'm going to explain an article here in a minute. But, I kind of want to explain my issue with this first. So here's the deal. People don't have to share my opinion on this Texas A&M team. People don't need to agree with me on everything that, they're going 12-0 and they're going to win the playoff. No, you know what I mean? No one here is saying that. But I like if you're going to make an argument, if you're going to make a point about why this Texas A&M team is going to, not live up to expectations or be a disappointment, I just think you need to have better reasoning than this article. So an article from Saturday Blitz gave 3 SEC football teams that will disappoint in 2024. It was Texas A&M, LSU, and Texas. So here's the deal. Once again, if you feel based on talent, maybe quarterback play, you have issue with the offensive line, whatever it is, that this Texas A&M team is not going to succeed, I can live with that. I can. I'm not going to sit here and say you're wrong. Like, I get it. If you give me an actual genuine reason, but the reason that they give here, I just flat out disagree with. So, they give a little introduction here, then they say number 3, Texas A&M. Something about Texas A&M just doesn't excite me heading into the season, and that's not a knock on the Aggies. It has more to do with the schedule being a nightmare than anything else. Okay. So let me read this paragraph, and then I'll explain why that confuses me. I think the excitement of getting top 5 recruiting classes has fizzled out in College Station because they didn't live up to the expectations placed on them under Fisher. But Mike Elko is more of a cultural fit in College Station, and he should be able to turn this thing around. Completely agree with that paragraph. Now, so here's what I don't understand about the schedule argument. I think too many people look at the names on the schedule and they don't break down the home to away ratio. So Texas A&M's schedule is not easy. Never have I said it's easy. It is manageable. That's been the word I've used quite often. I think manageable is a really good word to describe this schedule. And the reason I say that is because your home to away ratio, when it comes to the talent you're playing at home and talent you're playing on the road, is really good. You're playing some really, really good football teams at home and teams that just aren't as good on the road or at neutral sites. And that, to me, is huge. And so, I want to reiterate this. If this article came out and said Texas A&M's offensive line is a huge concern, and that has me worried about the Aggies and their ability to win, 8 football games, whatever. If that was the argument, I'm all in. That's fair. I understand that. But the schedule is really hard. I don't know if I agree with that argument. I think the whole point here is that, once again, your most challenging games, LSU, Missouri, Texas, and Notre Dame, are all at Kyle Field in front of the 12th man, in front of your home fans. We know the difference the home field advantage makes in college football. It's a huge deal. When I've continued to explain how challenging I think those matchups with Florida and Auburn on the road are going to be. Those are tough games. I still think we're going to talk about the timing. We got some more kickoff times, and well, at least now we know like morning, afternoon, evening. And there's some games that set up to be a little more difficult than I expected because of some kickoff times. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But so let's keep reading what he has to say here. So he says, some are expecting Texas A&M to be good right away under Elko, and that's very possible seeing as he turned Duke around in a hurry, but I think expectations need to be tempered. Texas A&M has played its way into some post-spring top 25 projections, and that seems fair considering the roster is still solid, but the 2024 schedule is brutal. Once again, Texas A&M opens the season with Notre Dame before getting a break in week 2 against McNeese. Then it travels to Florida to face the Gators before another bye against Bowling Green. Following that, there are no more easy games with Arkansas, Missouri, LSU, and Texas all coming to College Station or playing the Aggies at a neutral site, which is the Arkansas game. They also travel to Mississippi State, South Carolina, Auburn, and SEC play. The schedule sets up for around 6 losses, which is too many for a projected top 25 team. So I challenge anybody to look at this schedule and find me 6 losses. 6 losses. So basically, to me, 6 losses means that you go 0-4 in those tough games at home, Notre Dame, Missouri, LSU, and Texas. You go 0-4, which I do not believe is going to happen. And then you lose 2 of probably, at Florida, at Auburn, and I'd say at South Carolina. I'm more of a believer in South Carolina than Mississippi State. So you go 1-2 in those games. That is the route to 6-6. I mean, once again, you look at this. So you got McNeese, you've got Bowling Green, and New Mexico State. So you've got 3 wins already on the schedule, which means in 9 football games, you would have to go 3-6. And I just don't see you, Mississippi State, I think, is a really winnable football game. At South Carolina is a really winnable football game. I think Arkansas is going to be really, really, really bad. I really do. So that right there is, I think, your 6 wins. I think South Carolina is overrated. I think Mississippi State. I think South Carolina is the best of those 3 teams. But I still think they're very beatable. And then I think Mississippi State and Arkansas are incredibly beatable. So let's say you win those games. There's 6 wins right there. Now you got to steal 1 against Florida, Auburn for 7, steal 2 for 8, steal 2, and then beat one of those 4 teams home for 9 wins. I don't know how you can look at this schedule. I think so here's my opinion. I think even if Texas A&M underperforms expectations and they aren't as good as I'm projecting, others are projecting maybe the schedule, South Carolina and Arkansas, let's say, and Florida surprise people. They're really good. That happens. I still think 7 wins is what we're looking at. I think I'm looking at, I would say, yes, the worst case scenario is 6-6. It's the worst case scenario. But I mean, this article makes it sound like 6-6 is like what you project is going to happen. He projects is going to happen. And I just don't think you can look at this schedule and say, oh, I'm projecting 6-6. I'm projecting 8-4. I think 9-3 is reasonable. I think 7-5 is reasonable. I think that 6-6, I just don't see that happening. So, once again, if the take here was Texas A&M's offensive line isn't good enough, or the secondary is just too concerning for me, I would be completely fine with that argument because, once again, those are concerns I share with many as well. So I would have been completely fine with that argument. I think what frustrates me is, it's the polar opposite of what I've been arguing here for months, is that the reason that I'm so high on Texas A&M this year compared to others and compared to, probably the roster and stuff like that is because they have such a manageable schedule home and away. The goal for a schedule is to play your tough games at home and play your easier games on the road. This gives you a better chance to win your tough games in front of a really good environment, and then you go on the road and beat the teams you should beat. So that's my whole argument. And if you're going to sit here and say Texas A&M is a tough schedule, I mean, I would say their schedule, there's probably 8 to 10 schedules harder than theirs in the SEC. So I don't understand that argument. I disagree with that. I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on that. But I read the whole blurb, so that's the whole argument. And I agree with some and I disagree with some. So, but I just don't get how you can sit here and argue that the schedule is going to be the reason this team does not end up having a good year. And I just don't know if I agree with that. Another article from Saturday Blitz, it ranked Texas A&M's 3 top additions, newcomers via the portal. And I agree with one. I kind of agree with the second. And then the third I don't agree with. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Listen, there is no better place to go buy a ticket for anything you might need a ticket for. Concert, sporting event, comedy, theater, whatever you want to buy a ticket for, you can go buy it on the Game Time app for the best possible price. It's what I do now when I am buying a ticket. I always buy it on Game Time. And what I'll do is I will wait till a day or two before the event, and I will go get my tickets on the Game Time app with the best last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and other things of the sort. So that's why wait a little bit. Go to Game Time, save some money on the Game Time app. It's the best way to buy a ticket. It's what I do, and I highly recommend it's what y'all do as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, the lowest prices, guaranteed. So another article from Saturday Blitz ranked Texas A&M's 3 most impactful transfers, most impactful newcomers. And so, number 1 was Nick Scorton. We all know that. Don't disagree there. No debate there. I think 2 and 3 are where I have a little bit of issue. So we'll start at 3, and that's Des Ricks. I think that while I love Des Ricks, I do. I really do. And I think he's going to be really good. I think people are getting too excited about, the stars. He had this many stars. He was ranked so high out of high school. He was a Nick Saban recruit, and all that stuff's great. And I don't disagree with any of that. My only argument would be that you have brought in a ton of talent on the secondary. Yes, that has probably a little bit less stars out of high school, a little less talented when it comes to coming out of the high school ranks, but you've got some really talented players in this secondary, in this cornerback room. And so I kind of look at this and I say to myself, yeah, I think it's Des Ricks is a great player, and I'm not at all upset he's ranked here. It's completely fair. But I think there's a bunch of different corners you could have had here when it comes to impact that I wouldn't have been upset about. Well, whether it's BJ Mays or Donovan Saunders or Jaden Hill. I mean, there are so many of these impactful transfers when it comes to the secondary that you could have had at this spot, and I'd have been fine with. You could have gone any direction with this. They went Des Ricks, and I think it's a little bit more based on the talent he possessed at high school and the upside, which is there, and that's a fair reason. I'm not knocking it, saying that there's no way that Des Ricks isn't, a guy that should be ranked there in this list. He should. I'm just saying, I think if you interchanged him with a couple of these other secondary players that Coach Elko brought in via the portal, I wouldn't be upset with that. I think that'd be completely fair. So the player ranked second is where I have more of an issue, and that is Cyrus Allen. So I think Cyrus Allen's a very good football player who's going to help this team a lot. Do not get me wrong here when I make this argument. But what I want to argue is that I think he's getting a little bit overhyped as a guy who's going to be, in my opinion, in the two deep. Cyrus Allen is a really good receiver transfer that you brought in. He's going to help you a lot. He's a huge depth piece for this football team. He adds so much value to this team. I mean, how much value he brings can't even be put in words. He is so valuable to this football team. There's no debate to it. But I do think people in general are overhyping him based on what his role is going to be. I think there are so many transfers that are going to be a little bit more impactful than Cyrus Allen. Now, Cyrus Allen, I think, is one injury away from being a starter. We are everyone, all you everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know my opinion on it's going to be Noah Thomas, Jade Walker, and Moose Muhammad out there starting. Then you're going to have your two deep guys. And I think Cyrus Allen is one of the first guys off the bench in the two deep. No question there. But, I just look at this and I say to myself, I think that a guy like Armaj Reed Adams, who we believe is going to start at, probably left guard, one of the guard spots, I think he is going to have way more impact and is way more valuable to this offense, especially starting off the season, than Cyrus Allen will be. Now, if, let's say Jade Walker goes down with injury and has to miss 3 weeks, and Cyrus Allen is the one that replaces him, yes, he then becomes incredibly valuable. But I would have taken the linebacker transfers, Williams and DeShields, Armaj Reed Adams, and honestly, a good chunk of these secondary players in that spot Cyrus Allen is, just based on the fact that I think all of those players, the linebackers, secondary guys, and Armaj Reed Adams, are going to have more of an impact right now on the field compared to what we're going to see from Cyrus Allen. So, and I want to keep reiterating this. This is not a knock to Cyrus Allen. The value he brings to this team is through the roof. Y'all know I am a huge depth is everything guy, because depth is everything. Depth matters. You have to have elite depth if you want to have an elite roster. Injuries happen. It's part of football, part of the game we all love so much. You're going to see players go down. Injuries happen. It's part of football. So you have to have talented players behind your talented players who can come in and play valuable reps, play valuable snaps for your team when these injuries happen. And Cyrus Allen is a great example of exactly that. He is a player who's going to come in. He's a player that's going to bring value as a elite player on the bench. He's off the bench. He's a guy who's going to come in and help your football team if there's injuries. He's a guy who will play snaps without injuries. I believe that if everybody stays healthy, he's still going to have a role for this team. I really don't even think that's much of a debate. I feel pretty good that Cyrus Allen's going to have his role on this team. But I don't think that he is the second most valuable transfer newcomer on this roster. I think there are probably 5, 6, 7 transfers, like I said, the linebackers, the secondary guys, and Armaj Reed Adams that I would have ranked higher than him. So that's my take on that. I want y'all to let me know in the YouTube comments. Do you disagree? Do you think Cyrus Allen is going to be, is this valuable and I'm misjudging this? I'm really curious to hear y'all's thoughts. And I want to read it one more time. I'm not knocking Cyrus Allen. I think he's a great player and a great addition to this team, and he's going to help, and he's going to probably have 300-400 yards. But I'm saying I don't think the value he brings is greater than some of these other players that Coach Oko and company brought in via the transfer portal. So let me know y'all's thoughts on that in the YouTube comments. We found out more schedule stuff, what time kickoffs are going to be. So now we know what time some kickoffs are going to be. And we also know, okay, this game's going to be in the morning. This game's going to be in the afternoon. This game's going to be in the evening. And we know which games are going to be flexed, which means, they're going to kind of pick that when we get closer to the season. Oh, it's going to be a noon game. It's going to be an evening game. It's going to be a whatever game. So we're going to talk about that and what does this mean for Texas A&M coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. So We now know some of these kickoffs, and I forget which ones we already knew. I know we knew the Notre Dame kickoff time. I know we knew that, but I forget there's some of these other ones we knew. I think it was maybe the first three, but we're gonna run through all of them regardless. It doesn't really matter. So the first game of the season is a 6:30 kickoff against the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Obviously this is gonna be College game day. This is gonna be a hyped up football game to really bring in to start the Elko era the right way. Ton of excitement around this football game. I mean, just anytime College game day is in town, there's a lot of fun to be had, a lot of excitement. And I just think this is great all around for this program, great for this football team, great for Coach Elko, great for these players, great for the fans. I'm excited about this game. So that is a 6:30 kickoff time. The matchup with McNeese is an 11:45 kickoff time. Nothing really surprising there, normal stuff. Then you go to play Florida in Gainesville, and this is a 2:30 kickoff. If I could have picked what time to have, I would have loved for this to have been an 11 kickoff. I think something about, coaches always say they like when they're playing on the road, they like playing the early games because it lets you kind of walk in and sneak up on your opponent. And so, that Auburn game and Florida game, I think are examples of two football games I'd rather see be at 11, but it's better 2:30 than 6:30. I do not want to be in the swamp in the evening, knowing that once again, I've said this time and time again, this game for Florida is one that, they have to win it. Their schedule is in. Yeah, you want to talk about we talked about in our first segment today, the Texas A&M schedule is hard. You want to talk about a hard schedule? Go look at Florida's. My goodness, and I say that all the time, but they're going to be motivated. They need this game. It's going to be not hopefully for Texas A&M, but that's hopefully for Florida fans, kick things off in the right way for them. So, they're going to want that one bad. And I'd rather a 2:30 kickoff than a 6:30 kickoff, but I'd rather an 11 kickoff than a 2:30 kickoff. Then Bowling Green is a 6:30 kickoff at home, which, once again, I would, and I'll go ahead and spoil the New Mexico State game is a 6:45 kickoff. This kind of irks me. It's like I'd rather have those be noon kickoffs and have the more important games be evening kickoffs. That's just if I was picking the schedule, that's what I would want to have happen because you want to play these tough games under the lights of Kyle Field, the 12th man rocking. That's what you want. So, not happy that two of your night games are these, games against your not as great opponents. Archie, it's one of these ones just listed as afternoon, so probably 2:30 kick or something like that. In Jerry World, and that's going to be a fun game, a fun matchup. But I think that last year we talked about how weird that game is. We talked about that in our crossover with John Neighbors of Locked On Razorbacks. But I think the Texas A&M kind of ended that whole, this game's weird thing last year. Now, I think they're going to be able to take care of business here. Then Mizzou is an 11 o'clock kickoff. Exactly. I wish it was a 2:30 or a 6:30 kickoff because of exactly what I just talked about. Missouri just wants to come in, sneak in, win, and leave. They don't want to play under the lights. That's not what a team wants to do. So I wish they would have had to have done that. And it's a little bit, it stinks that's reality. Mississippi State and LSU, the next two games are flex games, which means when we get, a week before, we'll find out what time the kickoff is. I think it kind of depends, like who's good, who's bad. Is this a primetime game? Like LSU, I think, if Texas A&M is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If they're 6-1 heading into that game, and LSU is 6-1 or 7-0, that's a potential college game day, super hyped up nighttime kickoff game. So that's why I believe that's flexed. South Carolina is going to be a night game. That's going to be tough. Going to play Sandstorm on the road and a night game makes that game tougher. That's why I'm a little more concerned about that game than I was. If that was an 11 o'clock kickoff, once again, I'd be like, okay, get in, get out, win. Like I said, New Mexico State, 6:45. Auburn is a flex game, as is Texas. I think same thing. They're going to read out how good is Auburn, how good is Texas A&M compared to Texas, and they're going to give times for these games. You would love the Texas game to be a night kickoff, and you would love the Auburn game to be an 11 o'clock kickoff. That would be ideal for those two games. But that is what Texas A&M's schedule is looking like when it comes to kickoff times. And this stuff does matter. So you got to hope that some of these flex games and games listed as night, afternoon work in Texas A&M's favor, because, you want to play teams at optimal times to help you have a good chance of winning some football games. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you all so much for being here every single day. I really do appreciate it. I hope everybody has an outstanding rest of their Wednesday, and we will see you tomorrow.